Welcome back to Kuma English Listening Hub. Today we are going behind the scenes of the movies you love, not to talk about actors, costumes, or special effects, but about something far more invisible and just as important: sound. In this episode, we will explore how film sound is created, why silence is never really silent, and how audio can completely change the way you feel about a scene. By the end, you may never watch a movie in the same way again. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You are watching an intense scene. A character is walking down a dark corridor. You hear their footsteps echoing on the floor. A distant door creaks. A low, rumbling sound you cannot quite identify makes you feel tense. Suddenly, a sharp noise cuts through the air. Now, imagine the same scene without any sound at all, just moving pictures. The difference is enormous. This is the power of film sound. Let's start by breaking film sound into three main parts: dialogue, sound effects, and music. These three elements work together, but each of them has its own role, its own techniques, and its own challenges. First, dialogue. On the surface, dialogue seems simple. Actors speak, the camera records them, and the audience hears what they say. But in reality, capturing clear dialogue is surprisingly difficult. On a film set, there are always many unwanted sounds: traffic, wind, generators, crew members moving equipment, and costumes rustling. To deal with this, sound engineers usually use a combination of microphones. You have probably seen the famous boom mic, the long microphone on a pole that is held just above the actors' heads, carefully kept out of the camera frame. There are also tiny wireless microphones, hidden in the actors' clothing. Even with this equipment, a lot of dialogue recorded on set is not good enough. Maybe a plane flew overhead at the wrong moment. Maybe an actor turned their head away from the microphone. Maybe the director wants the line delivered in a slightly different way. This is where a process called ADR comes in. ADR stands for Automated Dialogue Replacement. After filming, actors go into a studio and listen to the original recording through headphones. Then, they repeat their lines in sync with their own lips on the screen. Sound editors later blend this clean studio dialogue with the rest of the audio so it feels natural. If you have ever watched a poorly dubbed movie, you know how strange it feels when the sound does not match the movement of the mouth. Doing good ADR is a real skill. The actor has to match not only the timing, but also the emotion and breath of the original performance. Now, let's move on to sound effects, which are often the most creative part of film sound. When you hear a sword being pulled out of its sheath, a punch landing, or a dinosaur roaring, you might assume that these sounds were recorded directly from real life. In some cases, they are, but very often, they are created in much more surprising ways. This is the job of the Foley artist. Foley artists are specialists who create everyday sounds in a studio while watching the film on a screen. They might walk on gravel to match a character's footsteps on a country road. They might shake a piece of metal to imitate armor. They might break celery sticks to imitate bones snapping in an action scene. The name Foley comes from Jack Foley, a pioneer of sound effects in early Hollywood. Even today, most big films still rely on Foley to add detail and realism to their soundscape. One reason Foley is so important is that microphones on set are usually focused on capturing dialogue, not the subtle sounds of clothing, footsteps, or objects. Without Foley, scenes can feel strangely empty, even if the visuals are very detailed. But sound effects are not always realistic. In fact, some of the most convincing sounds in cinema are highly exaggerated or completely invented. Think about the sound of a punch in a fight scene. Real punches are often surprisingly quiet. If a movie used only realistic sounds, the fight might feel weak and unimpressive. So sound designers make the punches louder, sharper, and more dramatic than they are in real life. They might combine the sound of slapping a bag of rice with hitting a piece of leather, and then add some bass to give it more impact. The same is true for explosions, car crashes, and monster roars. Many famous creature sounds are combinations of different animal noises, slowed down, reversed, or layered together. The goal is not to copy reality, but to create something that feels emotionally true to the audience. Now let's talk about the third major element of film sound: music. Film music is more than just background noise. It guides your emotions, shapes your expectations, and even changes the way you interpret a story. Consider this simple experiment. Imagine a scene where a character walks into a room, looks around, and closes the door. There is no dialogue, and nothing clearly dangerous happens. If you add cheerful, light music, the scene feels harmless, maybe even comic. If you add a slow, dissonant string sound, the same scene suddenly feels suspicious or ominous. Music can also help to tell you what a character is feeling, even when their face is calm. A tense, rhythmic soundtrack under a silent character might suggest anxiety, urgency, or hidden danger. Composers work closely with directors to decide where music should begin and end, how loud it should be, and what kind of instruments should be used. Timing is critical. A piece of music that starts 1 second too early or too late can completely change the effect of a scene. In modern films, music is often a mix of composed score and existing songs. Sometimes, a well-chosen song can define a whole moment in a film and stay in the audience's memory for years. Now that we have looked at dialogue, sound effects, and music, let's explore another important concept: the difference between diegetic and non-diegetic sound. Diegetic sound is sound that exists inside the world of the film. The characters can hear it. This includes dialogue, footsteps, a radio playing in the background, or the noise of cars on the street. Non-diegetic sound, on the other hand, is sound that only the audience hears. The characters are unaware of it. Film music is usually non-diegetic. So is a narrator's voice commenting on the story. This distinction may seem simple, but filmmakers use it in very creative ways. For example, imagine you hear a song at the start of a scene. At first, it sounds like a typical soundtrack, non-diegetic music. Then the camera moves and reveals a character wearing headphones. You realize that the music is actually coming from their device. At that moment, the music becomes diegetic. The character is listening to it, just like you are. Directors sometimes break the rule on purpose. They might start with diegetic sound and then gradually blend it into a full, dramatic soundtrack, keeping the same melody but changing the instruments and adding more layers. This can create a powerful transition from the realistic world of the characters to a more emotional or symbolic perspective. Let's also talk about silence. In film, silence is almost never complete. There is usually at least a faint background sound: the hum of a refrigerator, the distant noise of traffic, the rustle of trees. Sound designers use near silence to focus your attention. When the background noise suddenly drops, you unconsciously feel that something important is about to happen. The absence of sound can be more intense than loud music or explosions. In one famous example, during a dramatic moment, a film might suddenly cut almost all sound except for a single heartbeat or a character's breathing. This creates an intimate, almost uncomfortable closeness, pulling the audience into the character's inner experience. Another crucial tool is the soundscape, the overall audio environment of a scene. A rich soundscape usually includes multiple layers: foreground sounds, like a character's voice, and background sounds, like birds, traffic, or distant voices. Creating a believable soundscape requires careful planning. If a scene takes place in a busy cafe, the sound designer might combine the clinking of cups, a low murmur of conversations, a coffee machine, and some gentle music playing from speakers. All these elements are balanced so that the dialogue remains clear, but the space still feels alive. Sound can also be used to connect different scenes. For instance, a loud alarm in one scene might smoothly transform into a similar sound in the next scene, such as a school bell, a phone ringtone, or a car horn. This technique, known as a sound bridge, helps the audience move from one moment in time to another without feeling lost. You might be wondering, with all these elements, how do filmmakers keep the sound from becoming confusing or overwhelming? The answer lies in mixing. After all the sounds are recorded or created, they are brought into a mixing studio. There, A sound mixer adjusts the volume, tone, and position of each element. In a good mix, dialogue is usually the priority, because the audience needs to understand what the characters are saying. Music and sound effects support the dialogue, but do not overpower it, except in moments when dialogue is not important. Modern cinemas use surround sound systems, which allow mixers to place sounds in different speakers around the room. This creates a three-dimensional audio experience. A helicopter might move from behind you to in front of you. Rain might fall all around you. You feel as if you are inside the world of the film. On streaming platforms, people often watch films on laptops, tablets, or phones, sometimes with cheap speakers. This creates a challenge for sound professionals. Their work has to sound good both in a high-quality cinema and on small, portable devices. As technology develops, new possibilities and new difficulties appear. Virtual reality experiences, for example, require interactive sound that changes as the user moves their head or body. This means sound designers must think less like traditional filmmakers and more like game designers. Now, let's bring this back to you as an English learner. Understanding how film sound works can actually help you improve your listening skills. When you watch a movie in English, try this. For one short scene, focus only on the background sounds, not on the words. Ask yourself, what can I learn about the setting just from the soundscape? Is it day or night? Indoors or outdoors? Busy or quiet? Then watch the same scene again and pay attention to the rhythm of the dialogue. Do the characters interrupt each other? Do they speak quickly or slowly? Does the music support what they are saying or contrast with it? You can also practice shadowing using film dialogue. Choose a short line from a movie and repeat it immediately after the character, trying to copy the intonation, speed, and emotion. This will not only improve your pronunciation, but also your awareness of how sound and meaning are connected. Another exercise is to watch a scene with the sound turned off and guess what is happening. Then, watch the same scene again with sound on and notice how your interpretation changes. How much information did you miss without the audio? Finally, you might try listening to a film without looking at the screen, like a radio play. Can you still follow the story just from the dialogue, music, and sound effects? This will challenge your listening skills at a higher level and train your ear to pick up subtle details. Before we finish, let's summarize some key points about film sound. Dialogue is often re-recorded in studios using ADR to make it clearer and more controlled. Sound effects are designed and often created by foley artists who use creative methods to imitate or exaggerate real-life sounds. Music shapes our emotions and expectations, guiding the audience through the story even when nothing is said. Diegetic sounds exist inside the film world and can be heard by the characters, while non-diegetic sounds are only for the audience. Silence or near silence is a powerful tool that can create tension, focus, or intimacy. Soundscapes, sound bridges, and careful mixing help to create a coherent, immersive experience. The next time you watch a film, try to listen like a sound designer. Ask yourself, why did they choose this sound? How does this piece of music make me feel? What would happen if this moment were completely silent? By noticing these details, you will not only enjoy movies more deeply, but you will also train your ear in English at a C1 level, learning to recognize nuance, tone, and atmosphere. Thank you for listening to Kuma English Listening Hub. If you found this episode helpful, try re-listening without looking at the screen, or focus on a different sound element each time. See you in the next episode, and until then, keep listening carefully to the world of sound around you.